right, so the BRZ is really coming together. We got majority of the body panels on, and this is a really important step before we paint the car, because in order to mount body panels, especially like aftermarket body panels, wide body, and aftermarket front bumper, you really need to design bracketry that holds it in place. And after the car's painted, you could still do it, but then you got to grind into the paint. You make a bit of a mess. It's just so much better to knock all the fab work out before the car gets painted. Yeah, that looks sick.
So Tanner mocked this thing up and it's absolutely awesome. There's even a bend to avoid the headlight, and we got some margin here too, because as much as I want this thing to stay where it is right now, if we get bumped or if we bump someone or something, this thing has a little bit of area to move before it gets into the headlight. So this is perfect.
We even put a bash bar together, so that way as we're mocking up the whole body kit, we had something to permanently hang the bumper on. So the bash bar is, I'd say, 75% done. It's enough to hang the bumper on some Zeus fasteners, but there's a bottom section of the bash bar that is still missing. That's something that we can do after the chassis is painted, because the bash bar is one of those pieces that bolts onto the chassis. It's not permanently welded to it. So as soon as we get everything back on the car after it's painted, we'll go ahead and wrap up the rest of the bash bar. And the bottom section of the bash bar is really there just to have more structural rigidity for the bumper. So if you hit like clipping points or cones, it doesn't just break the bottom half of the bumper. Also at speed, we noticed that these cars start to fold body panels in from all the freaking air resistance that is acting on the bumper itself. So it's really important to brace the corners and the bottom of the bumper at speed. It does start to actually break apart if it's not supported. So Seibon Hood is in place, stoked on that. I really wanted to build the hood pins to be in a component that can be removed off the vehicle, and we did exactly that. The hood pins are actually built on this 1-inch DOM tube. It's fairly thin wall, it's very lightweight, and it ties into the same bolts that tie the bash bar in. So when you buzz these 4 bolts off, you can remove the bash bar. You could also remove this section, and this gives us a really nice open area to pull the engine in and out if we need to service things, and just in general, easier to get to all the components that are inside the engine bay by removing this stuff. So you don't permanently have hood pins that are welded to the chassis and potentially can be in the way. Also, the headlights mount up to the same structure. It's removable. Headlight bracket is built in really close to the bumper bracket. This picks up on the top of the bumper. This picks up on the headlight. The headlight's also attached to the fender brace as well. All these components are completely detachable from the chassis, which I'm really stoked on. There's not many things in the front end that we welded to the unibody except for the engine mounts. Other than that, everything is a bolt-on solution that we created. And I'm really, really stoked on these Alpha Rex headlights. They're an OEM replacement, a little bit lighter than OEM headlights, and they have a ton of LED power built into them. It's really gonna be interesting tapping into the pigtail and figuring out what actual LED I wanna enable inside the headlight. It's got a cool like LED running light strip, as well as like a high beam, low beam. So I'm gonna have to play around with that. That's gonna be a future Odie's problem when we get to wiring the chassis. Oh yeah. We also have to mount the fenders, which was not that big of a deal. Really what is important when you're making brackets for the fenders, side skirt, they all have to blend together. The body lines have to match. The fender and the door have to play well together so the door opens and closes without it clipping the front fender. Aftermarket parts sometimes are a hurdle to line up with body lines and just overall fitment, but the Street Hunter Designs kit fits really, really well. I was actually blown away with how well everything lines up. So we're using a blend of Street Hunters and Seibon. I'm using Seibon doors, Seibon hood, Seibon trunk, and then Street Hunters, fenders, side skirt, quarter panels, front bumper. There's a bunch of canards and cool little pieces that add to the kit to make it look more aggressive. We don't have those mocked up just yet, but those mount to the actual carbon fiber, not to the chassis. So we're gonna install those after the car is painted. Also, there's some sheet metal screws holding everything in place just temporarily. We're gonna remove those when we pull the whole kit off and put rib nuts in, so then you have a nice threaded bunk to attach everything to. There's brackets that we welded underneath of that to make sure that everything's located in the proper spot. The Seibon doors fit really well. We just have to transfer the OEM door handles to it. And we also have to gut the inside of the door out. The doors come from Seibon with provisions to mount the window, interior door handle, all of that. But we can't run that because we have a cage, and I opted for the door bar to be intruding into the door itself, so I have more like elbow room for driving. Cage Kits does offer a roll cage that allows you to retain the OEM door, I'm pretty confident, but obviously this is a pro level car and ergonomics inside for the driver are my top priority. So Nate went ahead and trimmed the Seibon door panel so that it actually clears a roll cage. So the last pieces of the puzzle for the interior, we're putting the battery box in, and this is just a very generic aluminum battery box, but in order to get this sucker in there, there's a metal plate that we have to weld to the chassis, make sure it's nice and leveled, weld it in, and then we're able to mount this battery box to that tray and also mount the hardware in order to anchor down the battery so it's nice and safe. After the battery box found its home here, last piece of the puzzle was the Safecraft fire suppression bottle. It's a 10-pound bottle, which is a little bit bigger than what's mandated by Formula D, but I always like having a lot of fire suppression in the car. I've had some bad experiences in the past.
And look at Rome, because, oh my gosh!
Went with what I feel like is the best on the market, and that would be Safecraft. That's gonna fit next to the fuel cell. I already riv nutted some provisions to mount these bottle brackets to the chassis and then mount the bottle to the brackets. Battle Arrow Kevlar quarter panels allowed us to remove a lot of the OEM sheet metal, take a lot of the weight out, and make a lot of room for clearance for the big GT radial tires that were on this car and all that suspension travel that the combination of Wisefab and Feal offer. So now all that is cleared out and we're running wider track width, so we needed a wide body. The Street 100 kit allows us to run wider track width. These are carbon fiber quarter panels. They're quite flexible, which is really crazy. Most of the carbon fiber I've ever felt was actually really rigid, but TJ Hunt was very adamant about how flexible his kits are, and he said, I'll be blown away, and I really am. This is insane. So this quarter panel also comes with a piece that mounts to the OEM bumper that continues that wider track width theme all the way to the back. So I'm stoked on this, that it's not letting the tire just kind of be exposed in the very back. It's a very nice continuous look. We did have to use an OEM bumper with this kit, which I'm actually thrilled about because it is urethane, it's super flexible, and I am a huge fan of OEM rear bumpers. The back of drift cars get thrashed, so stoked on being able to just replace it with another urethane bumper if this one gets too thrashed out. So we use Zeus tabs and Zeus fasteners to locate the bumper and to pull it off quickly. What's really cool is that if we need to put another bumper on it, we're actually using the backup camera or parking sensor hole to locate the Zeus. So if we get another bumper, we don't have to find out and measure where to drill for this. We just pop it into the, I guess, backup camera sensor.
Take that distance. Fine. Cool.
These Street Hunter sights just look absolutely sick, but what's gonna make them look even cooler is that these pieces that they come with. So we're not gonna mount these until the car's painted and everything's put back together, but we are gonna have provisions to mount them with rib nuts along the bottom of the rocker. But I think this is gonna give this car a very aggressive look because it's mounting a whole nother piece to the side skirt that makes it look a little bit wider, a little bit more aggressive. So absolutely stoked on putting these things on.
All right, so one of the bottom radiator mounts, the rubber bushing, is actually a rubber bushing from a Subaru rear Feal 441 top mount. So if you want one of these to build a radiator mount, you just gotta call Feal and get a rubber bushing for a WRX rear top mount.
So we got these rubber bushings that we use for my radiator mount. They happen to be rubber bushings that we use on Feal coilovers. And today we happen to be stopping by Feal Suspension. For those of you tuning in recently, I wanted to let you know that Feal Suspension not only builds cool race cars that we compete in all over the country and sometimes globally, we also make really cool coilover kits. We have coilover kits ranging from one-way adjustable to two-way adjustable and even three-way adjustable kits. We can build them for drifting, road racing, drag racing, and other various disciplines of driving. So if you're looking for high quality custom coilovers, look us up on fealsuspension.com.
Oh, nice. Look at this thing. Oh, nothing like putting brand new parts on a car. Carbon on carbon. That looks sick.
Seibon provided us with this awesome trunk lid. It's completely carbon. And since this trunk lid is kind of petite, I typically mount my trunk lids on my S chassis on hood pins, but since this thing is so petite, I really wanted to retain the factory hinges. There's not much overhang in the back of this car either, so I don't anticipate being able to bury this car into walls like an S chassis because there's bigger consequences. The wheels are closer to the back. I went ahead and reused the factory trunk hinges and mounted these latches to allow us to keep the trunk lid closed. In the event that it does get hit, we don't want this thing popping open because in Formula Drift, that's an automatic zero if a latchable item opens up during a run. Still got to get used to these things, but man, this is so convenient to just be able to open it up. There's not much to service back here for us except for keeping an eye on our Durality brushless fans and the radiator being back here. But I really do like that this thing opens up, makes it easier for my guys to service things in the back of the car instead of unlatching the hood or unlatching the trunk and then finding a place to put it. Trunk anchors are held in by an independent mount. We wanted to make sure that the trunk anchors aren't attached to the bumper whatsoever. That's why the bumper cover is trimmed, and they actually mount to this brace that picks up on the same bolts as the bash bar, but it is completely independent of the bash bar. That was really important to me because historically I bend this often, especially when you go into the wall a little bit too deep. And the last thing I want is if the bottom bash bar gets bent for the trunk to actually detach because these things now move over so much or they rip off the bash bar. So we're keeping as many things in the back of the car independent as possible. Bottom bash bar, the supports for these, also the taillights, all float on their own mounts. So that way if something gets hit, it doesn't take out the whole back of the car all together at once.
God, this thing's amazing. It's so good. Very good. Wow. I like it so much. Very cool. Oh. Careful now, buddy. Wait till you need to do that.
So we're at the stage where we got to pull all the body panels off. The body kit comes off. Keep the stuff in the interior of the car in place still. I kind of want to double check everything before we pull it apart. But let's go ahead and get all the body panels off of the car. unfortunate things that happens while you're building a car is that you have some casualties to some of the parts that you're just mocking up. You know, you might scratch up some really nice carbon fiber body panels as you're mocking things up. You might dent a really nice tank or something as you're mounting it. And you may also drop a brand new Alpha Rex taillight and break the whole corner off. And I did that earlier. I'm gonna have to call Alpha Rex and explain the situation. But hey, this will be a great spare taillight because taillights don't live very long on the back of a drift car. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the sheet metal screws, and then we're gonna replace, well, we're gonna drill those holes out bigger and put rivet nuts in. But there might be more holes under here on this quarter panel. So I'm marking where the sheet metal screw holes that we like are located. So that way I put rivet nuts in the right holes, because as I was mocking this up, I might have drilled a hole here or there on accident in the wrong spot. So after I pull it, now I know these are the ones that you put rivet nuts in. Those are the holes that we want to actually use. Ah, that feels so easy, just removing that whole corner off the car. So the Street Hunter fender flare or wide body is attached to this Battle Arrow quarter panel. And yeah, you don't see any of the hardware on the outside because they have like a nice flange that they built in, and you see the studs that are built into the carbon fiber, and those just pick up on the back. All of this is area that we're gonna cut out. Obviously we don't need this part of the Battle Arrow quarter panel anymore. We actually want to open that up so there's more space for the wheel to come into the quarter panel itself. Man, now that I have this off, I'm seeing there's so much more that we got to weld up on the chassis before I can go to paint. And I really want to paint this thing in the next couple days. That's just on my schedule. It's a hard deadline that I have to meet. I want to start putting the car together. There's so much more work that we have to do. And yeah, I'm gonna have to spend quite a bit of time finish welding this stuff, a lot of cleaning. Yeah, just so much freaking work.
So as I'm taking things apart, I realized that the master cylinder reservoir was going to be mounted remotely, probably somewhere out here. But then I was thinking, well, I could just mount it to the actual master cylinder, which would make it pretty tough to remove without taking the reservoir off, which originally is why I wanted to remotely mount it. But now I'm thinking if we just siphon out the fluid before we swap out the master cylinder out the track, it's really not that big of a deal. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up this bracket just a little bit so that the resi actually sinks into it. It's almost there, it almost fits. So I'm just gonna open it up a little bit, and then this could be all integrated into one unit. Here's the thing with having it all in one piece. The master will not physically fit in and out until you separate it out. But this packaging is just so much nicer and cleaner versus having a remote line that runs somewhere else and having the resi mounted somewhere else. So no big deal. We're pretty used to cycling out power steering fluid by siphoning out all this power steering fluid out of the resi. So this is not really going to be a big chore for us if we have to swap out the master cylinder, siphon it out, and then we can disconnect the resi and then pull the master cylinder out. So I much prefer it this way than having it remotely mounted.
All right, it is absolute rush time at the shop. We didn't even get a chance to unload the cars after winter jam. They were put away wet and dirty. We just got them out of the trailer in here because we're supposed to be getting freezing temperatures over the night, and I don't want the water freezing in the motors causing an issue. Nice to have everything back under the same roof. And tomorrow morning I fly out to vacation. So this is my last chance to make sure this is all squared away before it gets painted. I'm gonna leave this chassis in the hands of Nate and my dad to paint it while I'm on vacation. When I come back to work, putting this thing all together. Tanner's wrapping up the last little pieces of fabrication. We gotta weld a few little things that we put on the chassis. When I come back from vacation, this thing should be clean, should be painted and ready for assembly. So make sure to subscribe. Don't miss the next episode when we start putting all the really cool parts that you can get through Subimods on my BRZ clean painted chassis.